"Excuse me, you're my seat," Naomi said, voice soft but steady as she clutched her boarding pass. The man in 2AA, white guy with graying hair. Armani suit. And the kind of entitled calm you only get from a lifetime of getting your way to even glance up from his laptop. First class on this Boeing 737 was dead quiet. Tension building as a flight attendant Sandra, perfectly polished, swooped over. Her smile barely masking that "here we go again" look. Without even checking Naomi's ticket, she turned to her. "Sweetie, let's find your seat in economy." "Okay." Naomi didn't flinch. "But this is my seat," she insisted, holding up her pass. 2A. That's when Kingston Jenkins, her dad, 6'2", built like a linebacker, but with the calm of an engineer, stepped up from economy. He'd booked himself back there on purpose, wanting Naomi to know that humility wasn't optional, not even for billionaires. "My daughter's seat was purchased weeks ago," Kingston said, his tone calm but unmovable. "We have all the documentation." Richard, the guy in Tua, scoffed, waving his platinum loyalty card like a badge. 15 years flying first class. "I don't fly economy. Surely we can resolve this. The child can't possibly need the workspace." You could hear the judgment dripping from every word. Even a few other first-class passengers looked up, suddenly way too invested in the drama. But here's what no one knew. Naomi Jenkins, at just 11 years old, ran a tech company worth over $2 billion. She'd built an algorithm that changed educational tech, refused a lowball buyout from TechCore Ventures. And that morning, she'd reviewed a quarterly growth projection that would make any CEO jealous. But in that moment, she was just a black girl being told she didn't belong. An older woman across the aisle, Elizabeth Montgomery, sharp eyes, silk scarf, the aura of someone who sees everything, stood up. "Perhaps I can offer a solution. Mr. Blackwell can have my seat, and the young lady keeps hers." Richard paused, torn between his pride and the lifeline being thrown his way. He grumbled, gathered his things, and moved. Naomi caught her dad's eye. His slight nod was all she needed. Standing ground. The engines roared, but the real turbulence was brewing, because Richard Blackwell, still simmering with wounded pride, pulled out his phone and fired off a message that would snowball into something way bigger, a call to airport security that would ground the flight, spark a federal investigation, and crack open the kind of corporate conspiracy Silicon Valley PR firms get paid to bury. 20 minutes after takeoff, Naomi was quietly sketching out ideas for a new haptic feedback system, something to help visually impaired students. Richard dialed airport security, making vague but pointed accusations: fraud, fake identity, security threat. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a situation on board, we're returning to the nearest airport. Please remain seated." You could feel hundreds of eyes swivel to Naomi. Her stomach dropped, but she didn't cry. Instead, she opened her tablet, pretending to review slides for her San Francisco pitch, the one that could land $50 million in funding and bring her software to every underserved school in America. See, Kingston Jenkins had risked everything for this dream. Gave up a senior engineer gig at Ford, mortgaged their Detroit home twice, ran cables through their living room so Naomi could build a server farm at age 9. When Naomi fixed a major bug at 6 a.m. that improved learning for 47,000 special needs student worldwide, she did it fueled by the memory of her mother, Kesha, who'd been a public school teacher and the first to recognize her genius. At the airport, a little girl spotted Naomi. "It's the Dreamscape lady. She taught me to read." Her mom, amazed, explained how Naomi's software helped her dyslexic daughter go from hating books to reading Harry Potter. "You did the hard work," Naomi told her. "Your brain is magic." But not everyone was charmed. Richard Blackwell watched from a distance, phone in hand, thinking not about learning, but competition. He worked for Next Gen Educational Systems, recently bought by TechCore Ventures, a powerhouse in the edtech niche. Just 2 weeks ago, Richard had sat in a meeting where executives talked about neutralizing competitors thought it meant better products, not sabotage. On board, as boarding finished, Naomi, in her blazer, took her seat up front. Kingston back in economy. He watched her from 3 rows behind. Is his seat taken? Elizabeth Montgomery sat beside him, and they chatted. When Kingston mentioned his background, Elizabeth said, MIT, then Harvard Law, now venture capital. Everyone in this niche knows Dreamscape. Your daughter declining tech generous offer? Brave. Back in first class, Richard suddenly reappeared. You're my seat, he said, waving his boarding pass at Naomi. The flight attendant, without a glance at Naomi's pass, started to move her until Kingston intervened, laying out the confirmation code and receipts. Sandra's face paled as she realized Richard was actually assigned to Economy Plus. He bristled, I don't fly economy. Elizabeth once again offered her seat. As everyone resettled, Naomi and Kingston shared a silent exchange. Hold your ground. Always. But Richard had already triggered something much bigger. As the plane hit cruising altitude, flight attendant Michael approached. Miss Jenkins, the captain needs a word. In the cockpit, the captain laid out the allegations. Someone had accused them of financial fraud, money laundering through international education partnerships. Kingston's calm turned steely. Zoe Washington, Dreamscape's COO, joined in, explaining every dollar, every school reel, traceable impact. But this wasn't random. Elizabeth, who'd once worked for TechCore, revealed she was a whistleblower, carrying months of evidence showing a systematic campaign to destroy minority-led companies who refused to sell. TechCore's Project Barrier had targeted Dreamscape next. When the plane landed, FBI agents and police met Naomi on the tarmac. In a conference room, they sifted through accusations and real data. Every offshore account was an initiative serving thousands of underserved students. Their new chief counsel, Diane Shin, came armed with documents showing the same playbook used against multiple companies. Refused Techer, faced sabotage. Elizabeth sent her evidence to the media, the SEC, and the FBI. Suddenly, Richard Blackwell found himself exposed not as a hero of corporate loyalty, but as a pawn in a much bigger, uglier game. The federal investigation exploded. Racketeering, civil rights violations, antitrust, corporate espionage. 17 TechCore execs indicted, billions frozen, the old guard of Silicon Valley in retreat. Naomi's story made waves. At 12, she took the stage before a crowd of thousands, streamed to millions. 6 months ago, someone tried to remove me from my seat, first on a plane, then from my industry. But innovation isn't about who's allowed at the table. It's about building new tables where everyone belongs. She launched a $100 million fund for minority founders, with Elizabeth and, surprisingly, a reformed Richard Blackwell helping oversee ethical reforms. The revolution that started with a stolen seat became a movement, changing the rules for who gets to innovate, to lead, to change the world. So, if you've ever felt like you didn't belong, like the system was rigged to keep you out, remember, you don't need permission to fly. And when you're soaring, don't forget to lift someone else up. 2. If Naomi's journey moved you, hit subscribe and share your story. The world needs your vision and your voice right now.